us when we are live. It's 7 o'clock in New Zealand in the evening. So good evening, everyone, to the Ars Electronica Garden Aotearoa, the artist talks. It is my absolute pleasure to Marco Schnabel, Tane Moletta, and Yinan Liu through the evening. And we've got 22 exciting projects that we are running through in time slots of 6 to 8 minutes. So we expect that the program is going to take about 2.5 hours. I should have introduced myself. My name is Uwe Rieger. I am from the University of Auckland, where I am heading the ArcSec lab, looking into extended realities, and one of the co-organizers of the Ars Electronica here. I'll hand over to Marc Aurel Schnabel, who is the Dean of the Faculty of Design, Innovation and Architecture at Victoria University of Wellington, and he's also one of the directors of DARA, the Digital Architecture Research Alliance. Marc Aurel.
Yeah, wonderful, Uwe, for the introduction. Just want to say a quick word about the program which is coming. It's really a fantastic firework and gives us a snapshot of what is done in the arts and technology space here in New Zealand this year, where we all now struggle with COVID. The event was planned originally as a twin event, so that we have a physical exhibition and the online version, but COVID forced us to go now all online. But it's wonderful. I'd be very excited to see now all the projects. We will take you through and MC you in turns around it, and you will see what's coming up. Okay, Tane, it's your turn. Thank you.
Hello, thank you, Mark. Hi, my name's Tane Moletta. I'm based also in Wellington, New Zealand, in the Faculty of Architecture and Design. From time to time, I'll pop up and introduce different projects, the ones that I'm a little bit closer to, and basically walk you a little bit through the night. And I look forward to spending time with you all and introduce some really exciting projects. So thank you, everybody. We'll hear from you soon.
Yinan, do you want to briefly wave into the camera?
Hello.
I don't know if you could see her. Yinan is sitting at the main computer and mixing the desk there and trying to maneuver us through all the difficulties that we might have on the way. So she really needs to remain her nerves there, and that's why she's probably not going to talk in between. Okay,
we're gonna fantastic, Yinan. That's really good. Keep up the spirit. Very good. Thank you.
All right, we're going to kick off the evening with the person who was running and organizing the Aotearoa Concert night last night, Fabio Morale. And if you have missed this concert night, now luckily it's recorded. You can get access to it through our webpage, ars.nz. So check it out. It's really worthwhile. I'll hand over to you, Fabio.
Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Fabio Monreale. I am a lecturer at the University of Auckland. I teach composition and computer music, and the piece that I performed online at Ars Electronica Garden Aotearoa this year is called Forme Cangianti. Is changing shapes, that's pretty much what it means, and it's an audiovisual live coding composition. I have to say that I don't particularly like the term audiovisual live coding, but it probably that's the best thing that I can use to describe this piece. So what was my objective with this piece was to try to create a sort of a visual presence to some electronic music. So, like computer synthesized sounds don't have a visual identity like traditional instruments do. So my kind of challenge, my artistic objective here in this research is really try to give a body to the music that I make, the electronic music that I make. Okay, so I'm gonna show you a little bit of few things that I've done, but I start from the infrastructure, the technical infrastructure, the architecture of my piece. So I have these two separated parts, audio and visuals. So the audio is coded in Super Collider, and the visuals are shaders using like the random processing. And I have, first of all, it's composed of two parts, let's say, like two stages. The first stage is about pre-programming. At least that was my approach. A number of mathematical functions, equations, that both govern the audio and the visual part of the composition. So I'm having the same set of very complex, here I just have like three, but I have like thousands of them, equations that actually govern behaviors, both the auditory part and the visual part. So for instance, the second synth is a very simple sine wave that results in a sine wave on the audio, like in the audio part, and something like that on the visual. For instance, we might have a shape that changes accordingly to that shape. It's not exactly what happens, it is just a visual representation, a simplification. But the idea again is that I have the same mathematical equations that govern the behaviors of the audio and the visuals. So pre-program, so all these synths and shapes are kind of dormant to start with. And then what I do is at performance time, I live perform by coding on using Super Collider. So I code in Super Collider, and then I set variables of these equations to change through the piece. For instance, I can say set the volume to 1. The volume in a waveform is basically a multiplication factor. So at the beginning, this might have been 0 to 0.5, and then I say set to 1. It sets the sound to 1, the sound goes on, and also the same thing, I'm sending a message via OSC to the visual environment saying put that variable to 1. And yeah, so I'm using Super Collider. I could do the other way around, from processing to Super Collider, doesn't matter, there are OSC messages. And yeah, I could even use a MIDI keyboard or anything else really, but that's what I've used. Okay, so I'm gonna just want to show you a few things. This is my space, my audiovisual interface. I just divided the screen into two parts because I really want also the audience to see my interaction. That was a little bit one of my goals. And so this is the idle condition, this kind of blue sphere. Hopefully you will see well. And then I can start triggering things so this is all the setup of my pre-programmed synths. And at this point, I have everything that I do in real time. So for instance, I can start saying, put this volume, volume of one synth to 1, and also send an OSC message in which I also give 1, because this n variable is 1, to this specific OSC tag. So if I start it, you can see that there is this sound that comes on pretty much the same time that the ring of light blinks. And so in this case, the connection between the visual and the audio is very literal, very idiomorphic, I would say. So on, off, off, but I can be more ambiguous. So other times, let me put back this to 0. Other times, like for instance, so with these other shape and synth, it's more ambiguous. So there is kind of the room reverb to some extent that changes the pulse of this object, and then the rhythmic part that is more intense. This is also quite ambiguous, sort of a thing. off, but not super clearly. Other things that are quite direct are these 6 circles that you might have seen if you see the piece. So I have these, I slowly trigger, and now I'm gonna do it fast because I don't have time, I have half a minute. But I trigger all these sort of things slowly with a sub bass as well. And they're all quite literal in the sense that they all come at the same time, on, off, music on, music off. I have a sub bass that I programmed as well here, and I can change not just the volume but other parameters like the volume, for instance. Say go to 10 pulse per second, 1 pulse per second, and this sort of thing. Or I can do other perform other changes and other behaviors. But I think that can be enough for now. I hope you found it a little bit inspiring, and I hope you enjoyed the piece. Thanks so much.
We are still on a black screen. Okay, here I am. Thank you very much, Fabio. Very interesting, and I can just repeat. Please have a look at the fantastic recorded live stream from yesterday. The next project is LightSense, which was developed at my lab, the ArcSec lab, in collaboration with the Augmented Human Lab and the Empathic Computing Lab. Now, initially, we were hoping to have this ready and present as a cyber-physical installation at our exhibition. Now, the physical part is not possible, but the cyber part, that one is still running. We've currently got a digital twin on Zoom operating, and if you go on our webpage, Ars, have a look at the project, you can link up with the cyber part of the installation, the AI system, and lead a conversation with this thing. It's quite fun. Yinan and I, Yinan Liu, who has been working with me on this project, or has been leading this project with me, have prepared a video. And Yinan, you wanna play it in? The ArcSec Lab for Cyber-Physical Design and Interactive Systems is based at the University of Auckland. ArcSec stands hereby for architecture per second, and this pretty much describes what we are after: buildings and environments that can respond in real time. Our aim is to connect the dynamic properties of virtual worlds with the multisensory qualities of physical constructions and locations. Specific to our lab is the use of one-to-one prototypes and architectural scale installations. This ranges from objects to laboratory settings to artistic installations to applied solutions, from small to urban scale. An important aspect for us is to make our XR investigations accessible for large audience numbers. Our latest project, LightSense, is a collaboration with 2 research groups based at the Auckland Bioengineering Institute: the Augmented Human Lab with expertise in AI and the Empathic Computing Lab specialized in remote collaboration. LightSense is the last in an investigative series of 4 projects that Yinan and myself have been developing over the past 4 years. With LightScale 2, we were looking into the navigation of holographic spatial stories. LightTank investigated how digital constructions can merge with architectural structures using a stereoscopic projection technique. And LightWing 2 combined the balanced kinetic properties from LightScale with the principle of hybrid constructions from LightTank. LightSense advances from here. We are developing a truly cyber-physical architectural system that operates between the material and the networked world. This is achieved through 3 distinct features: an AI system, which gives the construction an independent behavior, an actuated system that can create simple architectural volumes, and an interconnected digital twin operating in an online gallery. Here's a diagrammatic overview. The setup allows for 2 forms of interaction: physical touch and oral conversation. Next to projectors and spatial sound, it uses motorized actuators, which enables the object to fold into different positions. Movement is achieved through the displacement of small balancing weights. Important for us is that the motorized activation is not absolute. It just gives the structure the tendency to move up or to move down. The manual interaction by the visitor is at any stage possible. As such, the folding structure is able to generate three basic architectural volumes: a V-shaped exclosure, a flat roof-like cover, and a tent-shaped enclosure. Similar to our previous installations Light Scale and Light Wing, it is an asymmetrically balanced structure, and it generates complex movement with only a minimum of force required. The ease of this movement of this 12-meter long structure is surprising. It allows for a sensory and aesthetically pleasing form of tangible interaction.
The augmentation is generated through an anaglyph projection principle, which we developed with the previous installations. However, this principle has taken a significant step further. We are now able to map stereoscopic images on a three-dimensionally transforming and spatially moving target screens. It becomes almost indistinguishable to tell what is physical and which parts are digital. And of course, these need to be understood in combination with the augmented and animated digital constructions. The sound that you hear now is spatial and interactive, and it's designed and produced by Ahmed Bard. The heart of the installation is an AI system, which controls the movement. It was developed by Thurundu Kalurachi from the Augmented Human Lab. The structure is able to initiate, lead, and to sustain a verbal conversation with a visitor. The AI has been trained to learn 60,000 poems from a data bank, and the poems then provide content, context, and the syntax of the conversation. In order to give the structure independent behavior, we are applying a reversed emotional analysis, so it's not the visitor that's being analyzed, but the response of the AI system. The emotional status of the AI is then being translated into 4 architectural follies: the pavilion of curiosity, the pavilion of love, the pavilion of hate, and of joy. In parallel, we have a digital twin of the LightSense operating online, a WebGL version designed by Ryo Hajika. The physical object and digital twin are synchronized live, and you're welcome to test the LightSense online version. Here's a short demo.
I'm sad about mood. What are your feelings?
I really think you got out of the bed today in the wrong side or something, because it seems like you are generally angry and sad today. I don't know how to make you feel happy. Maybe I should tell a happy story or something later so that you feel happy.
I love to explore new things. I love to keep my eyes open and look for something new to see. I like to go to bed early and wake up early to find a new room, a new bed, a different side of the bed. Something is interesting. Tell me more.
With cyberphysical architecture, we are exploring design principles which are situated at the intersection of the world, the computer, and the human. Our approach at the ArcSec Lab departs hereby from the understanding of architecture being simply a static environment. LightSense demonstrates a new form of responsive buildings. AI is not used for optimization of building performance or the substitution of human action, but to explore an architecture that may accompany us as a creative partner. Thank you very much. The next, I have a revive here. Yeah, okay.
hear you.
I'll try it again, yeah?
And
I'll be fast.
Thinking that would be good. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Next project is from the Augmented Human Lab at Auckland Bioengineering Institute, ClothTiles. Sashit Muthukumarana has prepared a video that outlines his projects, ClothTiles, and we'll have a look at it. Yinan.
Clothing actuation using a fundamental ClothTiles element. Because we have the advantage of having a variable stiffness, we can easily control the thickness of the 3D printed substrates. So in return, this allows us to regulate the actuator's behavior. We propose 5 ways to combine the ClothTiles basic elements to realize different deformation types over an extended area. They are linear, perpendicular, curved, circular, and angular methods. And each aggregation method has its own unique actuation behavior, as you can see here. Also, we can control the deformation forces by varying the basic element scaling properties. For example, by using widthwise scaling, we can render a more distributed force over a larger area of clothing. In the same way, using the lengthwise scaling technique, one can achieve a stronger deformation force that can increase the bending angle. As shown here, you can see how the bending angle of the basic element increases with the anchor point length. Also, with different levels of rigidity in the clothing, we can also control diverse actuation levels in terms of displacement. When it comes to the directionality aspects, we propose 2 placements where the cloth actuator can be placed. Those are outside and inside of the clothing. In each placement, we identify 3 directions along which the cloth actuator can be oriented. Based on each arrangement, several properties of the cloth actuation can be determined, such as the bending direction, visibility to the outside, and the type of sensation. We can achieve a unique set of actuation mechanisms by combining primitive structures that I mentioned before. Figure A on the top left incorporates a linear aggregation mechanism together with a variable scaling mechanism in a longitudinal direction. This generates a more intense pulling effect from a specific point on the cloth. Also, if you look at figure B, this actuator allows clothing surface to deform as a spherical cap. To observe how users find the ClothTiles, we performed a co-design study with the support of an expert. At first, we interpreted that the users would only design functional clothing, but instead, they were mostly concerned about the aesthetic aspects of the clothing. These are some cool ideas that users came up with. The first one is a face mask loosener. He had an issue with his face mask generating vapor on his spectacles when breathing. Another participant wanted to integrate a wrist compressor in his workout gloves to receive subtle notifications while doing exercises. When it comes to aesthetic designs, users came up with awesome ideas. One of the participants wanted to print a dog on his t-shirt that can visually stay. Also, another participant wanted to integrate a slight massager on her eye mask. And mainly, she wanted to retain the aesthetic aspects of that. From the user feedback, we could confirm that ClothTiles potentially can fulfill both functional as well as aesthetic aspects of clothing up to user expectations. Also, we developed a set of clothing actuators to further demonstrate the potential of ClothTiles for functional and aesthetic clothing applications. Amazing team behind this project. We are looking forward to future collaborations related to this project and other projects. And you can also check out our websites for more details. So feel free to contact us for further discussions. And this is a wrap, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you very much, Sashid. And now it's my absolute pleasure again to announce Charles Coroneo, who has been performing the song for our opening event. And the song was a live performance through Zoom. And well, I'll hand over to you, Charles. You're going to talk about the project, and I know people were fascinated, so they'll be really interested to hear. Thanks.
Hello. Kia ora mai tātou. He mihi aroha ki a koutou katoa, kua tai mai nei e tēnei pō e tūtoko te karangaranga maha. Hello, my name's Charles Coroneo, and I just like to give my greetings to everyone here in Aotearoa and in the wider world of the Ars Electronica Festival. I'd just like also to thank the curators of the Mara Aotearoa exhibition for including my work. I think that it's a very important time for artists, especially who are working in live performance, to be able to have these contexts to share what it might mean to make work for the digital environment and what the future of that work might look like. The song is a performance work that I first made, it's nearly probably 25 years ago. And at the time that I was making that work, I was really interested in the idea of how to retrieve archival material. And I made this work after an experience as a university student of trying to access some recordings of my tribal area from the music archive at Auckland University. Now, the recordings that I was asking to have access to were recorded in the 1950s, and they represent some of the most unusual and ancient songs of my tribe. And they had been sitting inside this archive for well over 50 years and largely become a really discontinued tradition in the tribe. And these songs were not being sung that often, and I had not really heard them that much. When I was a teenager, I was really fortunate to be invited by some older relatives to go to a wānanga in Waima at marae there, o Tātara, to learn waiata and karakia, incantations. I was 13 years old, and I was one of the only really young people that were there. What was really important is that there was a few recordings that the teachers had there, and they were of these recordings. I'd never heard them before. And so I thought to myself, if I ever get the chance to go to university, I'm going to try and look for these recordings. Well, I did, and it was the beginning of a very challenging journey of what it's like as an independent and Indigenous artist to have access to this material. Largely then became the property of ethnomusicology and research. And so fortunately for me, I was able to have access and then have the ability to, one, attune my ear to these really amazing recordings. And then I thought I should make a performance from there. One thing that I've learned from that experience is that when knowledge or history is archived, then it goes through this process of reformatting. The original recordings were done to reel. And when I had access to them, I had to take a DAT recorder to take a kind of atmospheric recording of what those were available in the archive. Then after that, they were digitized into CD, I think, and I was able to have CD copies. And then they've been opened up a little bit more to various digital files. This is an important aspect of some of the work that I'm doing, is that I realize now that we are constantly retrieving knowledge and reconstituting it in new formats. And part of my involvement in Ars Electronica is this is an opportunity for my performance work to be reformatted for new environments. And it's a way of invigorating the material. Another idea that I've really come to embrace is this, well, it's really around the idea of what knowledge is and how it's constituted. And that for live performance, what we have is this idea is that the body and the real space is the place where we're most comfortable and which is the ideal place to share this knowledge. Because of the pandemic and other experiences that I've had, that I thought to myself, I need to commit and embrace this new environment. And so going online is a way to invigorate my practice. And I would say, like with my relationship with talking with Uwe mostly, is that we've talked a lot about what this process is whether or not we are representing an idea or we are presenting it. And so like in our earlier conversations was about, could I provide video material of my performances? For me, I always try to steer the conversation towards, let's try to do a live process. And so one of the things that's important for those who are dancers or actors or performance artists to resist this idea of representing your work or the commodification. It's important to present your work live, especially in the new digital age. I say that because this is a new place of innovation, of acquisition of skills. I'm using largely domestic technology for all of my live performances. I'm using my computer, my iPad, and my iPhone. I don't use any specialized technology, and I use lighting sources like torches, portable LED lights, and things like that. So all of the setup and the technology that I use is very accessible. You don't need to have a specialized technical ability. You just need to have the resources to be able to work and explore. So lastly, I'd just like to finish off by saying that to embrace the kind of digital and technical world, that as a performance artist, it's a really amazing and challenging thing. It's intimidating. However, it's a really enjoyable and stimulating experience. So just like to say thank you to everyone who has been sending me messages about my performance a few days ago. And I'd just like to say that I really it means a lot to have that support because it allows me to continue on to the next project and the next performance. So, kia ora mai tātou, he mihi aroha kia koutou, anō reira tēnā koutou, a kia ora mai tātou.
Kia ora. Charles, that was very interesting to hear your pledge about the live performance, and I can really echo that the live component, especially in the digital realm, offers really a very different aspect to art and performing art. So thanks for your contribution in that. And some of you probably were lucky enough to be able to enjoy your presentation on our opening night. Without further ado, I want to move to our next project, which is titled Maritime Trace Exposure and the Cross Currents. It's a joint project by Wayne Bara, Carrie Hines, Mitsuho Nishokarka, and Tane Moletta. And I hand over directly to Tane, who will now present the work. Thank you.
Kia ora. Thank you very much, Mark Corral. Hello, everybody. Again, my name is Tane Moletta. I have dual roles in Garden Aotearoa, apart from helping others get their exhibits up and ready. I'm also a co-exhibitor along there. The project I'm involved in is called Maritime Trace Exposure Cross Currents, and I'm going to do my absolute best to try and share two different applications via screen share, and we'll see how I go at this. Probably we're okay. This is a brief kind of rundown of the kind of themes and the overall kind of motivations of this particular project. I'll spend a little bit of time talking about the team, a little bit of time talking about the let's say the conceptual underpinnings of what we're trying to do with this piece of work. I just pushed go on the wrong button. Let's not do that then. Excellent. So we'll go straight over here. The best thing about being a researcher in technology is that almost never works when you absolutely need it to. However, Maritime Trace Exposure is a collaborative project between, as Mark Corral said, it works across photography, poetry, fine arts, and architecture across 3 different institutes, all of which are based in the Wellington region. One of the diagrams that I'd hoped to show you was the proximity of Wellington to what's called the Nicholson's Trench. This is a body of submarine terrain, which is going from basically ankle-deep water down to 4,000 meters plus. And to put that into context, that is the same height as Mont Blanc in Europe, or half as high as Everest. And this is literally, well, not meters, but a kilometer from the CBD of Wellington City. And so if you kind of consider this enormous mass and volume, which is largely gone kind of unplumbed and discovered from an artistic expression, this is what we're attempting to explore in this piece of work. So the work is not an assemblage of individual parts. We've tried to work as a team to produce a unique experience which kind of pins together 4 separate creative trajectories, more or less. But in all cases, there is this notion that we're resonating to the notion of, let's say, distance and notions of perspective and historical visualizations of the maritime condition to what we're now experiencing is a much deeper one. There's absolutely a strong scientific interest in notions of depth and finding the bottoms, but it hasn't really happened in the same manner in an artistic sense so much. And so one of the things that's happened with the different practitioners is a real commitment to going on site, undertaking at sometimes physically dangerous fieldwork to retrieve samples in unusual locations. For example, Mizuho Nishioka, whose work I will navigate to at this very second, is taken at the boundary between two regional areas. The artist has ventured out into the ocean, retrieved physical samples of water and botanical elements, and then worked on site to produce these two different images, which are then kind of spliced together over the amount of time that is spent to take the record. And I guess, and to a certain degree, to contrast photography or photographic practices, which are often considered in milliseconds or parts of seconds. These are much, much longer records. They're into the 20, 40 minutes to generate each of the image works. And because of the photographic equipment used to produce these particular images, what we see is a kind of a breaking down of the temporal aspects of how we might create images, which these are some of the themes explored in this work here. So there's Mizuho's work. If we race over to the work of Wayne Barra, Wayne is a photographer and fine artist, also based in Wellington. To produce this body of work, has developed these large devices which can be submerged into the ocean. This particular body of work is called Deep Drops, 150 meters off Turakai Head, which is not far from Wellington CBD, but just on the edge of that, let's say, subterranean boundary where it goes, in colloquial terms, deep to really, really deep. And what we see is a very interesting thing is let's say, pedestrian use of the ocean condition is that where it's blue, it's all very happy, but out on that particular edge, because there is no kind of continental shelf, the sea is generally just quite black. We're not blessed with wonderful weather in Wellington. The sea is always kind of a grey-black kind of condition, and his work kind of trundles its way along this particular edge, and what you're seeing in these works is the devices being dragged back across the seabed in a very physical act, which are then retrieved back into the vessel and then photographed through a series of processes. So again, where we have Nishioka's work is creating this temporal kind of record. Again here, what Barra is producing is another kind of temporal record, which is a completely new way of recording inside of a photography context. If we then dive up a little bit higher, what we're actually looking at in this little piece of geometry is a simple XY grid whereby tidal data is pushed on the X and wave height is pushed on the Y, and these are kind of just a series of sequences that were run in real time using New Zealand has pretty good free data options, so each of these nodes are an intersection, and we've managed to create 4 different layers of different weather and weather, it's a data condition as well, and data visualization. And then towards the end here we have little shoals, and this is a body of work produced by Kerry Hines. And one of the things that I find compelling and actually really stimulating operating in this collaborative manner is that Kerry Hines is really particular about the placement of the lines on the page, and although an author, that height and that verticality, while a visual element of dropping down a line as such, but also when one goes through the content and reads through, in fact, the pieces of work as you unfold, and I'd rather allow you to explore them for yourselves, the content becomes a little bit more heavier and deeper in placement, which this is also spaced. I have the sound turned off now, but this can be accessed from the Garden Aotearoa hub and computers. What we find is basically there are words pulling up in space, but she's also again taken adventures out onto site to record a series of kind of sonic conditions which are interspaced within the whole space. So as someone who kind of sits as an architect, but in this context also kind of curator, sometimes anchor operator, we'll hopefully providing, let's say, another way or another means of looking at the ocean condition. So this is, again, available from the Garden Aotearoa hub. Please explore this. Thank you very much.
Well, yes, great. Thank you, Tane. You took me through a wonderland of underwater exploration, which I actually also did not have such great knowledge, living directly next to the big trough of 4,000 meters. That gives me a very different perspective. Well, I have the pleasure to introduce the work also of my colleagues, Minimum Mass. Minimum Mass is a story about love, loss, black holes, and is set in a contemporary New Zealand area called Aotearoa, and it's a very speculative world and speculative story, sort of a short interaction narrative in real time and in virtual reality. So the interesting part of it is photorealistic rendered, but it gives a story in VR, and it develops as you go along with it. So Raki, Syed, Areto, Echivara, Katayun, Deepa Mer, Sunny Taik, Jimmy Wilson, and John Aberdine worked together on this project. Well, thank you. Yunyan, would you
this methodology to put two people in dialogue in order to achieve the specific outcome of greater empathy on the subject of miscarriage. We know from research led by computer scientist Richard Stokely that presenting a world in miniature that can be freely manipulated through first-person interaction in VR promotes agency for the user. The more seamless a user interaction is, the more control a user feels over their environment. Building upon this research, our user experience allows a participant to translate or rotate a diorama using a single-handed interaction. The participant can physically move their body to get closer or further away from the diorama. The result is a feeling of immense care for these miniature worlds which the participant can literally hold in their hands. Minimum Mass probes the intersection of empathy and direct manipulation research in virtual reality to arrive at a powerful, story-driven experience of reproductive health. The artistic outcome translates visual information into experience. By actively engaging with our story world, the participant joins us in changing the narrative of miscarriage.
Thank you, Rocky. That's a amazing piece of work, and we're looking forward to sharing that later on. I will now pass us on to Marco Schnabel, and teamed up with Michael Ware and Byron Mallet. They're presenting virtual Futuna with and bridging the topics of architecture and digital heritage. So please, Marco and team, take it away.
Wonderful. Thanks, Tane, for your introduction. Maybe I just talk for the beginning quickly what our research lab is about. We call it DARA, it's the Digital Architecture Research Alliance, which takes its roots in the emerging and in computational pattern of cities and cultures. And there we see of how digital instruments can actually aid us in the evolution of these patterns and to allow designers to lead urban architecture design towards a multidimensional, multimodal form of integration. There, what for us becomes important is the space and the genius loci, and the culture and the context. So what we explore, and I call that always the 24+1 activities, where 24 hours has a day plus 1 is sort of the additionality that is which can digital exploration can allow us to overlay over our daily activities and engagement. Now the work of the virtual Futuna is a work of digital heritage to showcase of how very simple technology is allowed to make it possible for everybody to engage with heritage, and by that make it their own. So it is not a process which is done by clamps and top down, but actually one can see of what means heritage for one themselves, and how can I contribute to that. So our work is embedded in VR, in 360 photography, spiritual projections. And it illustrates very much the way of how we can reconstruct the meaning of heritage, and with that actually understand what is the value of heritage from the physical translated into the virtual, and how one can produce a new form of authenticity in a virtual environment. So we hope that by doing that, the virtual Futuna on Futuna invites everybody to reflect on this technology, on the value, and the authenticity, but at the same time allow everybody to come to New Zealand and explore what are actually our cultural context and values. Right, so maybe this is a good moment where I now invite Michael to talk a little bit about the making of the Futuna Chapel.
Kia ora everyone, my name is Michael. Can everyone hear me clear? Awesome. We did have some B-roll prepared to run in the background. We're good to go.
Yeah,
we'll let this run for a while. I'll let Mark just introduce Futuna itself, if he's there.
All right. The Futuna Chapel is a modernist building which was built in the 50s, 60s by a New Zealand architect who has a Maori background or tradition. And the interesting work of this chapel is it blends a Western modernist tradition and a Christian belief with a Maori cultural context. And this blend over of the different cultural contexts becomes very apparent in that very small and refined piece of architecture. What is important for it is how the light comes through, how one approaches the building, and how one then interacts with the building and everybody else in the community in the building. Michael.
As we can see here, by creating the 3D model, we are able to bring it into the digital realm through the likes of Sketchpad. This is previous work done by Mark. If you could speak to that real quick, just with the Gordon Wilson flats.
We tried here as a prototype the digital heritage in a different context of a different modernist building, which is now for demolition, and we explored of how the reality can be blended over with the virtual model.
So as Mark said, while not new, photogrammetry and photo scanning is becoming an increasingly accessible form of technology. I'm more or less the proof of that. With no real experience, a camera and a $40 software license, I was able to model Futuna in 3D. Using a tripod and a pre-planned route, it took me less than about an hour to capture the 1,000 images needed to build Futuna. The images were then optimized in a photo editing software to remove any hard shadows or anomalies in the images. They were sharpened and texturized, and any broken photos were subsequently thrown out. I used reality capture software as my photogrammetry software of choice. It's the industry standard. It's affordable through a license through Steam, and it's making it very accessible to anyone. After some tinkering to better understand the software, I was able to output my first texturized model at about 225 million tries. Which was quite a bit. So I had to then shift it into ZBrush for optimizing and cleaning the model. While not necessary, it does help to smooth things out and make the experience a little easier on the eyes. And after rebaking it, I was able to chuck it back in and get a nice complete model. Now with this complete model, we're able to push our research of architecture, as Byron will now discuss.
Right. Thank you, Michael. So taking this model and bringing this into virtual reality. So initially starting off by using an Unreal Engine focused approach, the COVID lockdown actually provided us a really nice opportunity to, instead of doing an Unreal, was actually adding the models directly into Mozilla Hubs using the Spoke editor. So as you can see here, like relatively quickly using basically software that could just be used inside of a browser, we were able to take Michael's lovely cleaned up model, bring it straight into this software that has both virtual reality and non-virtual reality components for sharing the space, and bring it to Mozilla Hubs, which is a wonderful sort of centralized social location. But not only that, it's a permanent location. So one of the advantages of VR, of course, is social connectivity as well as immersion. So bringing this location, which is a gathering location for people, of course, in reality, and bringing this into a virtual space where people can perform the same activity really just shows not only how powerful the tool is, but also by providing context for these locations, by bringing real-world social locations into VR is really quite powerful. So here's just a few shots of, this is all displayed inside of an Oculus Quest headset. So it's all actually done through a browser, even on the headset itself. So it's a little bit sort of the beginnings of sort of a metaversal sort of little series of bubbles for us to explore these sort of virtual pieces of architecture, but then bring people into these locations as well. So again, it's a very social location, and this is all able to be freely explored. Not only that, Mozilla has a really nice sort of, Hubs has a really nice way of, say, bridging the real with the virtual by allowing us to bring in 360-degree panoramas, as well as using the photogrammetry software. So you can kind of dip back out to reality every now and then to give us a little bit of context. So the hub is available from the Ars.nz garden. So you can access that through the main hub and then find your way to the virtual Futuna location. And if you want to know more information about the project as well, then you can access it at DARA.digital. Which is the core website for the DARA lab. I think I'll pass it back along to Mark just to wrap it up.
Okay, yeah, good. Thanks, Marion and Michael. So what we want to discuss in this context is how everybody can become part in the making of heritage, and everybody can become the actor as well as the consumer, if you want, of what heritage means. That becomes an important shift in the definition of heritage, because it is carried by us rather than carried to us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mark Aurel and Byron and Michael. Yeah, it's really worthwhile visiting the Mozilla Hub. I found it absolutely amazing how detailed this model was, and that it fits into the still experimental type of technology from Mozilla Hub. So if you especially got a VR headset at home, I think it's a super experience to go in there. The next project,
quickly, it also works with Google Cardboard, so you can use your smartphone. Works the same way as you use more sophisticated instruments.
And of course, works on the screen as well, so you don't need to have any headsets. It works in 2D as well. Okay, the next project up is XR Tumor Evolution Model. Now this is an interdisciplinary project at the University of Auckland from networks at the School of Medical and Health Science of the ArcSec Lab at the School of Architecture and Planning, and from the Center of E-Research. It's quite a large group of interdisciplinary researchers, cancer researchers, architects, and programmers that has developed a pop-up laboratory and pop-up presentation room for cancer research using as a main tool the HoloLens 2. What I find here interesting is that it is truly a piece of hybrid architecture. It's not just an app for the HoloLens, but a complete architectural setup which embeds digital information. Now I'll leave the explanation up to Ben Lawrence and Mike Davis, who have prepared a video.
I'm Ben Lawrence, a medical oncologist, and I look after people with cancer who have tumours that we can cure by working in teams with surgeons and other oncologists. However, sometimes I look after people with cancers that we cannot cure. And for these people, we use pills and potions and chemotherapies and immunotherapies that go all around the body to try to shrink the cancer so that the person can have a better quality of life and hopefully have a lot more time with their loved ones. One of the problems I have is that the current treatments that I use sometimes work in cancer on some parts of the body, but not all parts. And while some spots of cancer are shrinking on treatment, other parts of the cancer might grow and become life-threatening. Now we're beginning to learn why. It's because the different spots of cancer, even in one person, are not all the same. As cancer progresses and spreads, it picks up different mutations, mistakes in genes that make each spot of cancer behave in a different way in a different part of the body. And this is a fundamental problem for cancer treatment worldwide. How do oncologists deal with the fact that some parts of a cancer will respond well to a treatment, while other parts continue to grow? And how can we really understand this to change it? And how do we explain it to the people we care for? A way to see this problem came from an amazing woman I cared for. Over about 5 years, we got to know each other well, and I got to know a couple of her children too. And when she got near the end of her life and was running out of treatment options, she came to me and said, I know that you're a researcher and you do this genetic stuff. And when I die, would it be useful for you to have my cancers? Because I just don't want them. And this is how the project started. After her death, pathologists removed the cancer spots from her body, and we started to sequence them, to create a map of the cancer's evolution as it spread and developed mutations and changed. It's really complex. She had 89 different tumors. And as we began to read the gene sequence in each one, it became more and more apparent that many of them were quite different. And so we had all of these terabytes and terabytes of data, giving us incredible ability to look in extreme detail at each cancer spot. But it was too much for our human brains to put it all together, and too much to visualize in 3 dimensions. We needed a way of seeing this data, seeing the tumors as they evolved around her body. We needed a way of talking about the data as a research group. How could we understand the data if it was too complex to even talk about? We couldn't solve a 3-dimensional problem on a 2-dimensional computer screen. And that's when I came to Mike Davis and Uwe Rieger, who are architects. We needed people who create 3-dimensional space and understand the way humans interact with it. Of course, this isn't real 3-dimensional space. It's a recreation of reality using what's called extended reality, XR. And Mike's going to talk now to explain architecture's contribution to the project.
So Ben and his team brought us their problem, and that was to find a way to visualize the progression and evolution of tumours in their patient. The Microsoft HoloLens 2 is the new visualization technology behind this piece of research that lets us do exactly that. With augmented reality headsets, 2 or more people can discuss the same 3-dimensionally modelled digital information simultaneously as if the model is right there in front of them, regardless of where they are. In this situation, all each person needs is a headset. For us, this is a little bit like science fiction becoming science fact, and perhaps you'll get a sense of that on the screen. For this project, the 3D information we're looking at is a model of our patient's body, and the discussion is a sharing of ideas about the spread and progression of their cancer. Architecturally, the project consists of 3 layers. First, at the core, stands the model of our patient with their tumours located in relation to their skeleton. Then, embedded within the model, is a range of different types of information that can be pulled out and discussed. So things like genomics, scans, x-rays, biopsy information, that kind of thing. The outer layer is a circular space defined by screens. The screens act variously as projection surfaces to host supplementary information, as charging stations for the HoloLens, docking stations for tablets and other apparatus, or even as platforms for physical information such as 3D prints. We've introduced the idea that our project is spatial, it's social, and it's also aesthetic. And for Uwe and me, that's what makes it architectural. That's why we're involved. The immediate applications of the research are obviously in cancer research, but we also see this technology as an opportunity to develop an interactive tool that will let clinicians and patients visualize and discuss their disease and treatment. Now, this has implications for greater equality in healthcare. As an example, patients won't have to travel large distances at huge personal cost to meet with their doctors. So for us in New Zealand, a patient in Gisborne can interact with the same model at the same time as their doctor in Auckland. And they might just as easily seek opinions from international experts. On another level, those same patients can see for themselves the way their cancer looks in their own bodies which will help them better understand their situation, understand their cancer. So while these immediate applications are really exciting, the potential is much wider. At a time when we're kind of becoming comfortable working remotely, thanks to a global pandemic, technology like the HoloLens is a really exciting step forward. In terms of the world of aesthetics, we are exhibiting aspects of this work here as an art piece at Ars Electronica, which we acknowledge as one of the world's premier platforms for creative research in digital art and design, and we're really grateful for this opportunity. Historically, bigger picture, there's an argument that medicine and architecture shared a close relationship. It's a privilege to now be part of a project where once again we see a similar kind of closeness and opportunities being opened up between our disciplines. This is architecture and medicine extending the concept and use of space to improve people's lives.
Well, fantastic. Ben and his team was involved in that. I really enjoyed of how the research actually evolved from this very real scenario and took it then into the virtual realm. And it looked a little bit, reminds us to watching a movie, but actually it's now becomes the mainstream in architecture. It's my absolute pleasure now to introduce my colleague Thomas Tucker with his project, the Census Swirling project. And the fantastic take on his research is that in a virtual reality, which is very heavily on the visual senses, he tried to see of how that can be taken away from only the one sense, but actually involving all senses. So that means smell, touch, feel, and emotion at the same time. He developed an interesting part of where the sensorial experience is facilitated through a team of actors who are in a real world. So this blending between the real world and the pure virtual experience becomes heightened in his research project. So I invite Thomas now to introduce his work.
Yes, I think we're going to go ahead and roll a video showcasing the body of work, and it has a little bit of an explanation at the 4-minute mark.
This project asks, what are the boundaries of virtual reality? Are there ways we can have real experiences, engage all of our senses, or actually feel transported to another world? Sense's Swirling project is an exploration of our reality through virtual reality. This project takes an immersive virtual reality experience and extends that world outwards with behind-the-scenes theatrical and puppetry elements. What is usually an isolating technology experience is transformed into a world where participants can interact with the world around them, touch things that respond, smell things, communicate through interactive sound experience, and be a part of that world. My collaborative team is developing a rich array of scents for this project and building a library of organic scents. We are creating unique smells for each of the characters within the virtual reality scene. We are pushing the boundaries of the 5 senses by utilizing spatial and sound environments created with the latest developments in virtual reality, 5, Unreal gaming software, real-time and 3D sound. This project, currently under development, presents a virtual ecosphere with its own living entities. Each creature is created as a physical prop, has vibe tracking, and is puppeteered by a live performer. This entire exhibit is a sense-making metaphor for Thomas Tucker's meditations on his art derived from his mind's eye. We are now in the final production stage of our collaborative VR project. After our first research and development testing, we received vital feedback, which we plan to implement over the next academic year, and will continue to test each iteration to make the VR experience more engaging. Due to the pandemic, the creation of scent was put on hold, but beginning next month, we will again be collecting the essential oils from the flowers and herbs to develop the fragrances to be used for character development. We will also be creating prototypes for the delivery of the scents, and we'll be working closely with the chemistry department at Virginia Tech to produce these prototypes. We will be improving the interactivity with the puppets by adding more reactive conductive surfaces and improving the internal coding for the sound, making it easier for the puppeteers to physically react to the participants' touch.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Thomas. I really can't wait to see it. Now, I know you've sent the first part of your installation already down to New Zealand. Has arrived in Auckland, is somewhere stuck in customs, I believe.
No, it actually arrived today in the whole set. I haven't unpacked it yet. It's all in one piece. It's really exciting. So I now will unpack it and give it a try. I need a puppeteer to help me.
That I volunteer.
Yes.
So that gives me the opportunity then to see the project. So
Yeah.
as soon as we're getting out of lockdown here, I'll go down to Wellington.
Yes, do that. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you very much, Thomas.
Thank you so much. Bye.
The next project, Channeling Future Technologies, John Schulte from the Creative Designs and Additive Manufacturing Lab, which is headed by Professor Olaf Diegel, will now give a presentation about advanced printing technologies. John.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you, Vic. So, Channeling Future Technologies, 3D printing's opportunity to realize the impossible. Like I said, I'm in the creative design and additive manufacturing lab at Auckland. Where is that and what does it mean? Well, what we think of it is like a playground to explore 3D printing. This is what a picture that I have of it, and it by no means looks like this anymore. It's constantly evolving, constantly changing, and it's an interactive environment where you can come and feel sort of the cutting edge nature of different forms of manufacturing and technology. So 3D printing, we can explore it, we can understand the limitations of it and what we can do with it, how we can realize designs and things that we dream up of. One thing to note about it, we have heaps of toys. So like any good playground, we've got sort of a whole bunch of different toys. We can print in things like nylon, aluminium, stainless steel. We can do 3D printing in full color, and we do a whole bunch of research as well into different new materials. Up there in the blue, we've got our printers that we're currently using to 3D print food. So lots of cool technology, lots of cool capability, and very exciting, and you sort of want to jump at it. But there is something really interesting about 3D printing. It's you only really want to use it when it adds value. Now, what we mean by that is you don't necessarily want to print something that is boring and plain. Now, for some people, like boring engineers, that's probably an issue. But for artists, this is where it gets really exciting, because typically we add a lot of complexity. We add a lot of intricacy into our designs, and we really try and push the limits. Now, traditionally, we've been told, no, we cannot manufacture, we cannot realize these things. And they stay as renderings. So what we did here is we took a classic example of a really awesome artist. Shout out to Chad Knight. He does these amazing sort of wireframe sculptures. And what you see on the right is something that went viral on LinkedIn and was really inspiring. And it was this wireframe sculpture of this person where the hair was water flowing out. Very cool, very impressive. And we thought to ourselves, hey, that looks very familiar. That looks like a very complex design. And from an engineering point of view, which is where we sit, that looked like a manifold system. Now, a very, very complex manifold system, you can only imagine trying to build something like that would be like trying to build the combustion chambers and things like rockets. So we had to think about, okay, so how are we going to try and use this technology to realize something like that in 3D printing? Well, it starts with design, and there's been some amazing strides in design technology in recent years, and we're big fans of topology and the opportunity that it provides. So we were able to sort of replicate a lattice-based structure similar to the head you saw of Chad Knight. And then this is where the software really has come into an awesome space where we can now we can pattern geometries onto complex organic forms. And very awesome, we can control the different diameters, and we can control the different parameters of the model in a very simple sort of workflow. So not quite as complex as scripting in Grasshopper and doing this kind of work in Rhino. They've really made it more accessible to people to play around with mesh files and to really pattern on complex forms. Another really cool feature about this is that the workflows become reusable. So if you wanted to do a similar form, a similar, say, sculpture, but with a different base mesh, you could reuse a lot of the workflow. So from an artist's productivity point of view, it becomes a lot more seamless to create different visions that you might have. Now, design aside, Chad Knight had rendered his images beautifully. We have a design here. How do we realize that? Well, we use our awesome 3D printer, but there's a caveat. When you want to make things real, physics tends to play hardball. And as you can see, with printing in metal, you require support material. You can't run away from the fact that the heat needs to go somewhere, and you don't want it to go into places you don't want. So a lot of support material and a lot of design considerations here. So case in point, I'm just going to minimize that. We had to design and think about how we would access and get rid of the support material, in particular the support material inside of the head, because it had to print on top of something. So that's my arm reaching in and pulling out the material. Something to note again is this technology is a tool, and knowing how to use a tool means you can try and minimize the support material. Nonetheless, it still requires a lot of hard work and heavy lifting or heavy hitting in this case, and that's why you can see a hammer in the bottom left image. So once we've got the support material out, I guess the question is, does it work? And the answer is yes. Now, unfortunately, the way COVID has happened is this is the state of the art piece that we worked on. The idea is to have this fully assembled into a beautiful faucet with a sink and various LEDs interacting with the art piece. Now, why do we want to do that? Well, it's quite computationally difficult to render all of these sort of physics-based interactions. Printing it allows us to really achieve various visions a lot faster and with a lot more ease. So the complexity that 3D printing has provided for free has really helped shift change the game in what's possible in realizing art forms. So what does it mean for artists like Chad? Well, Chad currently makes some revenue by selling prints of his renders through his online store. Now, the cool thing about 3D printing is if you know how to follow those rules, in particular those ones about support material design and thinking about getting rid of the support and designing with the right tolerances for the machine, you could do the same thing. You could still have your artworks online that you sell as a real form using similar printing bureaus that you would use for printing your renders. Classic examples include sort of iMaterialize. It's a very well reputed international printing bureau. And locally in New Zealand, we've got some great bureaus as well. And that's why I've got FI Innovations over there. So if you don't know what kind of material or what kind of tolerances or how to get rid of support material, that's awesome. That's why the Creative Design Lab exists. So we are over there at Auckland University's Newmarket campus. And if you've got an idea, or if you're just curious, or better yet, if you just want to come play with some of our toys, definitely come give us a visit. Our door is always open when we're not in COVID lockdowns. So as soon as level 1 hits, by all means, come visit us. And what you'll see when you get there is a lot more than just Chad Knight's, an example of Chad Knight's implementation. We do a lot of other creative works. And in the top right, you'll see how we've taken examples of sort of like a fish orb piece. And that was inspired by a local artist called Peter Rao, who does amazing glass work. We said, can we 3D print that? But can we also change that form? Because we've got the digital model into other other products or other pieces of art that can be distributed to different sectors or to different levels of the market. And the answer is yes. We added a little ring on it, and it became jewelry. And I mentioned food printing. If you're really brave when you visit us, you can try a selection of our fish. Now, what you see in the bottom left is a chocolate fish, and then you'll see there's different colors, and those different colored fish are variations of chickpea and rice flour and even food coloring. And the idea behind the story we like to tell is the fish orb you see is basically the sushi of tomorrow, where you can design whatever flavor you want relative to whatever color fish you get, and whatever texture you want relative to the different sort of forms inside the object. But that's it from us. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much, John. I think we might be coming to pay a visit. I'm really, really surprised to see that a hammer is regarded so highly in your lab. However, I think it's an important part of your toolkit, so thanks for that. Next up, we have presentation material music by Mo Zare. So we're really looking forward to showing this on site and see how the sonic experiences fill our space. So we have to wait a little while for that to happen. But it would be great, Mo, if you can take the stage and explain your work in a little more detail. Thank you.
Thanks, Dane. Hi, everyone. My name is Mo Zari, and I'm a sound artist based in Wellington, where I'm a lecturer in sonic arts at Victoria University of Wellington. I'm originally from Iran, but I've been living and working in Wellington for the past almost 9 years. And the piece that I'm presenting here is called Material Music. And the main idea behind it is to kind of highlight the significance of physical material and physical materiality in contemporary sound art practice. So this piece was premiered as part of Isaiah 2020 in Montreal, which, funnily enough, it was supposed to be an in-person thing, and then COVID happened right before, and then, yeah, it was premiered again online. And the video that we're going to watch, which sort of walks you through the details about the project, was produced by the Isaiah organizing team. And just before we start the video, I just wanted to say that I just realized that I'm wearing the same exact sweater that I was wearing last year when I was producing the video, and that wasn't planned. Just want to say that I do have other sweaters also. But yeah, take it away, and hope you enjoy the video. My name is Mohammed Zari. I live in New Zealand, and I work with sound and audiovisual objects, both in the digital and also the sort of physical sense of the word. I was born and raised in Iran. I grew up there, and I went to university. I studied physics at Shahid Beheshti University of Tehran. So I wasn't formally trained as a musician or an artist until I moved to California in 2010 to study music technology at Cal Arts. And that's where I started to see a very big overlap between physics of sound and light travel, and certain approaches to sound and audiovisual art led by artists such as Riji Akira, which I found quite inspiring. I grew up in a brutalist apartment complex in west of Tehran called Ekbatan. And growing up and living among these beautifully geometric blocks of concrete really kind of formed a big part of my identity and my sense of aesthetics. So I came to New Zealand to do my PhD on what can be summarized as brutalist sound sculpture, where I started building links between my background in physics, the sort of post-digital wave of radical minimalism that I was really influenced by, and of course my deep-rooted affinity with brutalist architecture because of where I grew up. So brutalist architecture is mainly about some sort of an unapologetic and undecorated celebration of conventionally non-beautiful raw material like concrete, and in a very direct, functional, and sort of almost confrontational way. So in the same way in my work, I'm really interested in investing in the beauty and the very simple, raw, reductionist sonic and audiovisual material or structures. So material music consists of a series of sound sculptures, and at the heart of each one of them is a sample block of a solid matter like glass, steel, wood, marble, these kind of different materials. And in each unit, the material block has two solenoids, which are electromagnetic actuators that can move back and forth. So two solenoids are mounted on each side of the material block, and the solenoids can strike the material and make an audible contact, so strike it acoustically, physically. So to give you a bit of background, over the past decade or so, there's been a very noticeable resurgence of the physical object in sound-based arts. So the main idea behind material music is to really highlight the significance of this actual physical materiality within contemporary sound and audiovisual art. So the solenoids themselves are controlled using a small microcontroller, a teensy board, which is programmed ahead of time. And when the piece starts, all these actuators start hitting the material block simultaneously in sync at the rate of once per second. So while the actuator on the left-hand side in each unit keeps this rate throughout, this once per second rate, the signal that drives the right-hand side solenoid is very subtly and gradually delayed with each subsequent pulse. So the delay time for each unit is calculated based on the speed of sound traveling in that particular material that is used in that unit. So since the speed of sound traveling in different materials and media is different, based on the material, these delay times are then also different. And over time, the right-hand side pulses start shifting out of sync, and you start hearing and seeing these interlocking and phasing patterns that move in and out of sync with each other, creating syncopated rhythms against the constant pulse on the left-hand side actuator, which keeps that once per second rhythm. So essentially, you have these ever-evolving rhythmic structures that can be heard and also viewed throughout through the movement of the actuators, which is entirely and directly derived from the very essence of the physical material and objects that are used in this piece.
Thank you very much. Well, again, another project where we are really looking forward to see it live. And I think it's a really picture book project for Ars Electronica because it really transports, it combines so many different aspects, aesthetical, science aspects, digital aspects with each other, and makes these things tangible and produces a piece of art and music out of it. So thank you very much. Next project up is CyberBio, Jackie Sang. Jackie's project really pushes the use of the HoloLens 2, the current use of the HoloLens 2 to a new limit. But not only that, he really redefines the expression of reactive or responsive architecture. Up to you, Jackie.
Thank you, Uwe. Thank you for your introduction. I'm just going to share my screen here. There we go. Hello, my name is Jackie. I'm an architectural graduate and also a freelance designer. And this here is my project CyberBio, a mixed reality biolaboratory. It is my master's thesis project at the University of Auckland, supervised by Uwe Reger and Yan Li. In this installation, the users are required to wear a HoloLens 2, a mixed reality headset, and are able to enter into the installation space to interact with the biomaterials through touching, feeding, moisturizing, and speaking to it. The aim of this project is to create an interconnection between the human and the living materials, in which the user and the biomaterial could develop a companion-like relationship through the various mixed reality interactions. There are 3 topics which I will cover. Firstly, the creation of biomaterial that grows over time. Secondly, the design of mixed reality environment that augments the physical structure, allowing users to interact with data in space. Thirdly, the implementation of cyber-physical systems to create real-time feedback loop of data, connecting the digital and physical worlds. The biomaterials created in this project uses agar as primary ingredient. When mixed with water and maltose, it creates a plastic-like material. It is in fact a type of bioplastic. These images here shows a range of different combinations of the ingredients. Over time, mold and fungi populate among these biomaterial, creating colorful panels with soft and fluffy textures. Within these biomaterials are moisture sensors and transfusion tubes. The sensors help monitor the moisture values, while the transfusion tubes supply nutrients to feed the mold and fungi. When wearing the HoloLens 2, the user is able to see digital graphics augmented with physical installation. These digital graphics help you to navigate within the installation, allows you to see and interact with microimageries taken from the biomaterial itself, using virtual sliders to change between the different phases of mold growth, as well as activating various environmental actuators to regulate and control the growth of the mold, including using humidifiers and also solenoid valves. The real-time moisture data is displayed next to the sensor as a visual overlay. When the moisture level is low, the user is able to moisturize the biomaterial using a spray bottle. Virtual particles are emitted from the biomaterials when it's being moisturized to indicate that it's been sprayed enough. The user is also able to feed it with nutrients through using the valve control button, which is also a virtual button that you can interact through using HoloLens 2. It releases the liquid directly within the material once the button is pressed to help with the growth of the mold and fungi. The sensors and actuators act as a bridge between the living material and the user. It creates this real-time feedback loop of data in which the user can visualize data information of the biomaterials and also interact with them through the HoloLens 2. All the sensors and actuator devices are connected through Photon networking server. The system allows multiple users to experience the installation together. All components are put together within the greenhouse laboratory, which is the physical structure constructed to house these biomaterial. This space is designed and constructed as an enclosed space used to optimize the growth condition of fungi and mold. Humidifier and heater panels are embedded within the setup, allowing it to be warm and humid within the space. And this space can house up to 4 people at once to experience it together. Here is an overview of the interior of the biolaboratory space viewed through HoloLens 2, with infographics and various interactable components. As part of this exhibition, I've also prepared a virtual gallery on Mozilla Hub. You can access this through the main Mozilla Hub. It contains more information about this project, so feel free to take a visit. Now we will just play a pre-recorded footage of the installation. I'll pass this to Yinan.
Thank you so much, Jackie. That's a really terrific project. You didn't mention that you were actually a finalist for the National Architecture Awards, an event which I'm still kicking myself for not being able to attend, but I think it's just so exciting that you've managed to get a project which actively promotes fungus and mold as a physical entity in architectural space and have the judge panel seriously engage with your work. So thank you for pushing the boundary one step out. So that's terrific. The next project I'd like to introduce by Sarah Jane Blake is a project we've been trying to show for quite a while. And interestingly, when we've been engaging with her and talking about freight, the answer surprisingly came back in my inbox. Oh, don't worry, I'll sail this down at some point. And then at this particular moment, I realized, oh, that's correct. New Zealand is an archipelago. And so what I'd like to do now is introduce a Fantastical Journey by Boat, and Yinan will play the video.
Good morning, welcome and afternoon to Future Twilight Cruises. We will be your hosts. This is our cruise ship brochure. This will tell you all you need to know for your cruise. Survival is our #1 priority at twilight. You will be wearing a mask for this cruise. This will stop the gamma rays. The owl and the cat will be your captain and crew. They have lots of experience sailing their pea green boat and may take you to the land of the bong tree. If you are feeling seasick and unwell, just clap your hands. Remember, if you're unhappy and you know it, clap your hands. Sick bags are under the seat and there are no exits. We at Twilight Cruises pride ourselves on a no exit policy. This is your personal flotation device. You can pull the cord on the right and that will flotate it. Enjoy your cruise. Cocktails at 8, quoits and sunbathing on the aft deck, although in this climate, I would not advise that. So welcome, have a great trip, and bon voyage.
Thank you so much, Sarah Jane. You've added another chapter to our understanding of Moana Aotearoa. That's we really look forward to seeing the work on site at a later date. Next up, we have a group project from Ensemble Mechatronic. We have Blake Johnston, John Hare, and Bridget Johnson, based in Wellington, working from Massey University, Koka. I will let you guys take the stage. Thank you very much.
Sculpture bowls as part of the Ensemble Mechatronic group. Kinetic bowls is a sound work that explores directionality and materiality through a system of 3 rotating bowls. Each of the bowls is made up of a different material: brass, copper, and aluminium. The bowls have been turned into acoustic resonators and they each rotate slowly. The difference in material creates subtle variation in timbre from each of the bowls, and the shape of the bowl means that the audio is perceived spatially, moving around the room as they rotate. The piece explores these themes of materiality and directionality in combination with sound art, mechatronics, and spatialization. I hope you enjoy.
Kia ora, I'm Blake Johnston, and I'm here as a part of the Ensemble Mechatronic Collective. This work is entitled Rise, and is a mechatronic sound sculpture that explores the creation of a Rize rhythm. This Rize rhythm is an auditory illusion which appears to be getting faster and faster. And this work is seeking to create a physical manifestation of that illusion in a way that, in one sense, reveals the inner workings of how that illusion is created, but still is able to deceive and confound the senses of the audience. The work consists of 4 mechatronic units, which create these rhythms through controlling solenoids to hit wooden blocks. Here's a short video, I hope you enjoy.
Kia ora everybody, my name is John He. I'm an experimental sound and music technologist. An area of my practice involves reimagining ancient sonic practices as new musical interfaces for today's context. For the Ensemble Mechatronic collection, I'm presenting the work Seri, a quartet of Sarah. Sarah is a mechatronic revisioning of ancient Chinese yu, which is a scraper-class percussion used in chord and ritual music to mark time by hitting and scraping 27 wooden serrates with a bamboo brush mallet. In this work, Seri pays homage to the functionality of ancient Chinese yu. It marks moments using a series of hits and scrapes to render a choreography of grains and clouds in the visual domain, along with rotational and linear motions in the visual domain to create textural and spatial embellishments. Here are some media excerpts. Hope you enjoy them.
Blake, John, and Bridget, thank you so much for sharing that. Again, it's another project that is absolutely not rendered very well through speakers. However, we look forward to presenting better recordings of these works. And absolutely, Probably accessing the work through the videos through Vimeo, which has a better channel online, is a better way to experience these work. So thanks, team, for sharing that work. Next up, we have Paul Dunham with ClickRand. I am... Where are we? I'm lost on my sheet, sorry. Paul will go to option 2, which means you will have a short live Zoom intro. So sorry about biting that. Please take it away.
Thanks, Tane. And yeah, maybe one day we get to experience all these sound works in person, which would be great. My work is called ClickRand, which I describe as a sonic articulation of a book of random numbers. And that book was produced in 1955 by Rand Corporation, and it was titled A Million Random Digits and 100,000 Normal Deviates. So the work itself is based on an interrelated and kind of intertwined relationship between the book and the electromechanical relay. The reason I've chosen those objects is because at a certain intersection of time, the mechanical production and publication of large random number sets cut through that time with the emergence of electromechanical relay-based computers around the mid-20th century. So arguably, ClickRand is a form of data sonification because it utilizes the idea of the rhythmic clattering of those early computers really as a way of giving a voice to what would otherwise be a silent medium as the book. The layout of the relays in the work is based on the numeric layout of the book, and by using a series of these boards, which you'll see in the video, the work can be presented in different ways in an installation space, which then allows the space itself to be used as an active element of the work. Just using the relay constrains the sonic palette, so therefore these works utilize rhythm as its primary compositional element. And the compositions that you're about to see are based on a French sociologist and philosopher Henri Lefebvre's concept of rhythms in society and everyday life, what he called rhythm analysis. So really, let's just cue the video and let it speak for itself.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Paul. It was really great to get the conceptual linkages to the formation of your work as well. It's not often we get to have the artist standing beside their work and talking about it as well. So thank you for spending the time staying up late with us and sharing your work with the rest of the world. I appear to have just overheated my camera, which is excellent. So I will invisibly introduce Jim Murphy, also based in Wellington, with Machine Song Gesture. And let's see if we can get my camera working again. So please take it away. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, no worries. Yeah, first off, thanks so much for inviting me and letting me participate in this festival. Yeah, so I'm presenting this work, Machine Song Gesture 1, and I'm Jim Murphy. I'm a lecturer in sonic arts and music technology at Te Koki, New Zealand School of Music. So today, yeah, I'll be showing a video of this new work, which is called Machine Song Gesture 1, and it consists of three metal discs that are positioned in space, and they're actually suspended from motors. So they're suspended from three motors each, and on these metal discs are placed three ball bearings and a number of ball bearings. And let me just turn off my screen share. I'm getting some funny stuff here. One moment. I'll stop the share. Yeah, cool. So it's a kinetic audiovisual sculpture consisting of three separate modules. Each module has a metal disc suspended beneath three electric motors. As motors spin at subtly different speeds, they lift, lower, and tilt the metal discs. On each disc are a number of metal balls which roll around on the surface, visually highlighting its perturbations and producing sounds as they travel over the metal surface. So what is kind of going on with this piece? Well, I've been fascinated with this idea of granular synthesis, which is it's a creation of sounds from tiny, short snippets of audio, and emergent textures and timbres can arise from these systems. But one thing about these systems is that they're typically realized within kind of the cold and austere digital realm inside a computer. And what I'm particularly interested in exploring with this sculpture is the idea of diving into these things physically. So I see this work as a chance to render these systems in the physical world. It's a mechanical artwork that wouldn't exist without the prior thought and exploration of those working in the digital domain. So where such digital systems necessarily conceal much of their chain of causality, I really hope that this work lays bare its actions and reactions and the resulting audiovisual affect. So you'll notice that each bowl in the video that we'll play here in a second is hammered from a different material, aluminium, copper, and brass. And I think one benefit of exploring this kind of physically produced grain cloud is that the grains, which are the little metal balls that roll around, produce complex interactions, not only with themselves, but with the material that they traverse. So I think this work kind of, by embracing these different and imperfect materials, this sort of diversity of available timbre is really brought to the forefront. So I think taking the viewer on an immersive journey into an environment of vibrant materiality is really at the heart of this work. So with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and roll the video. So take it away. Thanks. Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much for your presentation. It was I was quite intrigued about the refinement of your project on the small movement and the impact of what it then does. That was really fascinating, and the interaction between the balls, where you think that they are just individual actors, but they're actually starting to act together in your installation. That was quite fascinating. Well, without further ado, and we're already sitting here nearly for 2.5 hours. It's so fascinating. I can't believe this. I introduce now Doug Easterly and Zach Charles with their project, the Polynomial Divination. It's a very interesting project because it looks at how human and human history try to devote their energy, you could say, to find about the truth around us and using different instruments and different tools. And Doug and Zach present a very new take to that one. So please take it away.
Do I need to share screen? Kia ora koutou. Hello, everyone. It's been wonderful seeing all these creative, inspiring projects. And thank you to Ars Electronica and Ars Aotearoa for inviting us. It's a real pleasure. So Polynomial Divination is a collaboration by myself, Doug Easterly, and Zach Charles, who's over here. Go to share screen. Not that side, I did the wrong one. That.
Yeah, we see now the PowerPoint interface. Very good.
Yeah.
Now we see only the preview of your presentation, not the actual presentation. The presenter view.
Is it working? It's just looking at the screen. It's great. That's okay. Oh, okay. Yes, I myself, I'm a media artist with most of my career working with creative coding and experimental animation. And And Zach is a 3D generalist and with a special interest in generative 3D printing. Unfortunately, due to our recent COVID-19 lockdown, the assembly of our project is lying in different parts across the campus that we've just recently gained access to. But today we'll talk through some of the concepts underlying the piece, and Zach has some Houdini renders and some small models that inform and are part of the project that we'll share. From a physical description, the project features highly detailed 3D prints generated from Houdini simulations installed in a mechatronic display machine, basically a customized robotic LED projector for translucent 3D prints. This happens to be our first collaboration, and it sometimes occurs instead of research leading teaching in the classroom. It is an example of classroom discussions and pedagogy informing a research pathway. Zach and I are co-teaching a graduate course that's based on effects and simulation here at Victoria University of Wellington's Miramar Creative Center, located in the heart of Wellington's vibrant film district. We're actually broadcasting live right now from our lab. The course explores various forms of particle simulation as applied to visual effects production in film and games. But we also spend time interrogating these standard themes, discussing why systems such as dust storms and engulfing waves are so dramatically arresting to audiences. In the first class, we viewed this film that you're probably familiar with. Charles and Ray Eames' Powers of 10. While not standard viewing for courses paired with Houdini, we found it served as a powerful touchstone. I'm sure most in the audience know of the film, but it unfolds highly systematic narrative connecting human scale to its cosmic and microscopic boundaries. The extent of scientific and extent of scientific and technological understanding. The film beautifully illustrates the rarity and preciousness of life. Not only are we bound within the constraints of earth, water, and fire hurtling through space, the standard media of effects simulation, but we ourselves are a bundle of systems and waves of energy. Or in other words, the cosmos is a tapestry of waves, systems, and energy patterns, where the human scale story is yet a pragmatic vivisection resting at the plane of our terrestrial existence. While not illustrating the sentiment specifically, may as well stop that if it's not. We're interested in how particle effects and simulation through experimental rendering and installation can explore more essential level narratives in an abstract form. So I'll hand it over to Zach, who has a few of the pieces that will be going into this installation when we're able to show it in person sometime soon, hopefully.
Okay, I'll keep this very, very brief. So I wasn't able to, we weren't able to kind of get past anything other than some basic test, kind of jury-rigged tests. So hopefully you can see this. This is a rendering of what we imagine the outcome will look like when it's projected. Yeah, should be able to see it.
Playing on the wrong one.
Is that? No, it should be. I think it's up on Ars Electronica. So this is kind of examining with what we have rendering technology-wise, using photon mapping, caustics, and volumetric simulations. What I imagine, or what we are hoping our installation will project through a physical media. So probably best to show you what that physical media is. Oh no. Oh no, just stop sharing. Okay. So the physical media is a what's known as a heterogeneous 3D print. I'm sorry about the camera quality. So this is a smoke simulation that's been 3D printed, volumetrically within a photo cured resin, and it kind of looks at the way that you can pass light through different media, and are able to kind of capture things that are inherently transient, volumetric simulations, and yes, kind of smoke and ephemeral effects, but providing them some media to be captured in, and then we can project light through those. So while we're kind of a little disappointed that we weren't able to fully construct our projector, we're hoping to do so in the coming weeks, and hopefully we'll have a much more practical example of what we're hoping to intending to create. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Zach and Doug. It's always amazing that people like us who can script geometries from data would rather sometimes take John's hammer from the 3D printing lab and aim it directly at Microsoft's supposedly easy to use software. However, we're really honored to see the brief introduction of your work held in hand. It's an object that I think we want to eventually engage with on a more palpable level. So we're looking forward to that, and thanks for sharing that. And thanks for progressing through technical issues. At least I'm the only one with a hardware issue. So thanks a lot. The next project I'll introduce is Blake Johnston with Spectra. Blake's based in Wellington, also working from College of Creative Arts at Massey, which is in Wellington also. And so I think we're moving straight to video. So I'll let Yinan play that now. Thanks very much.
Kia ora, I'm Blake Johnston. I am showing at Ars Electronica is entitled Spectra. Sadly, I won't be able to show the entirety of the work in this video. So instead, I'm going to discuss the conceptual materials that went into the work, and then a video which gives you a good understanding of the oral and visual languages that I'm using for this work. So Spectra is a mechatronic audiovisual work that explores the shared characteristics between light and sound and their shared spectrums. And the motivation for this work is that I'm really interested in the physicality of light and sound, especially how they move through mediums, as well as the differences between our senses and the kind of dynamic interplay between our different senses and how they relate to each other. And in the sound-based arts, there's a real focus on spatial explorations of sound, whether that is through exploring the resonant qualities of physical spaces, like rooms, or through resonant objects and the ways that they filter sound, or through the ways in which sound can move throughout space and how we are able to localize that sound. Often that's a really big part of sound-based artworks, is this movement through space. And this mapping out of space through our oral sense is something that we are always engaged with, which I'm really fascinated by. It was the basis for a previous work entitled Your Localization Exposed, in which the left and right ears are flipped. So the audience wears a headset, and that pretty much flips your left ear with your right ear and your right ear with your left. The audience were then asked to walk around a space and have this kind of conflicting sensory experience where their visual sense was left normal and their oral sense was then inverted or flipped. And of course the work created a lot of kind of perceptual confusion and kind of interesting responses. But what I was really interested in is how the oral and the visual sense are always in communication, and what happens when that communication is then distorted or broken down, or in this case kind of inverted. So Spectra is exploring this kind of communication between the oral and visual sense in quite a different way, in a very much more of an external manifestation of this relationship. The way that it does this is that it is a series of light deforming units, and pure white light gets sent through a lens, which is then deformed and manipulated by a mechatronic assemblage. This deformation of the lens then disperses the parts of the light, of the white light, and scatters its colours through chromatic aberration. The system is then composed for with sound, and through mapping the spectral qualities and the spectral characteristics of the sound onto the movement of the mechatronic assemblage, we then get a really strong interplay between light, colour and sound. Here's a video of a prototype of the lens deforming unit that shows how the lens moves when the motor is rotated. The stuttering movement of the motor there was quite an intentional choice, and allows for some really interesting kind of visual jolts as the lens gets moved, and eventually you can see there it actually kind of inverts. Here's another short video of it moving much more smoothly and seeing how that relationship works. As I'm not able to get access to the work physically currently, I've instead made a video that is trying to express the visual and oral languages that I'm using here. So the visuals that you'll see here are 4 different versions of the visual output, and these were made by taking photos of different manipulations of the lens. So one thing is that they are quite jittery, and they're actually just a series of photos rather than videos, than a video being taken. In terms of the sonic relationship here, this is very much the sonic materials that I'm using. However, they're not synced exactly to the video. So we won't quite get the one-to-one relationship that drives this kind of work. But hopefully it gives you a good understanding of the kind of sound and light results of the work. Hope you enjoy.
Wonderful. Thank you. That was very intriguing, especially if you could listen of how the heartbeat comes actually in the rhythm into the project. I really enjoyed that work and have this interface between the music and how it was visualized. The next project, fantastic. Miriam, my former colleague, she is a creative artist, researcher, and she works in the new digital cinema technologies. And here she really looks in the more experimental film and virtual reality making. And her work is quite intriguing. She called it the Embodied VR, where she looks into people whose daily work is intensive physically and physical, and how can one basically relate to that, not only from a voyeuristic point of view, but actually be embodied and take part and understand better their engagement. So I now invite Miriam to talk to her work by herself. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou. Thanks for the organisers, but also thanks to everyone else who shared their work this evening. It's been incredibly beautiful, exciting, engaging. So I'll just see if I can share screen to bring up some images. Oops, it does not want to fully share. Bear with me 1 second. I'll go through the desktop. So as Mark was saying, my project is called Embodied VR, and it's a project that tries to take a slightly different approach to VR in terms of working with live action 360-degree video, but also interactive components. So let's see if we can get the image of that. Okay, for some reason, it doesn't want to go full screen, so I'll just leave it as it is so you can see some of the images. So Embodied start off life as being a 360-degree VR film, whereas Mark said, I was looking at people with these intensely physical bodies and thinking what happens when you come into proximity in that strange optical illusion space that we have in virtual reality, where things seem immediately present to us, but we know we're in an optical illusion. We know it's not quite real. So I worked on this aspect of it, but then I also thought, how could this become more interactive? So I wanted to retain that live action element and then think about what could be added to make the viewer have a different type of relationship with the art itself. So what I then did was worked with the Unity designer to drop it into the game engine Unity, and then also working with the sound designers and the composer for the film to see what would happen if we tied the audio levels to the hand controllers of the VR headset. And the idea here was that if somebody's watching the VR film and becoming quite immersed in it, if they start to relax their body, then they drop their hands and the volume of the film goes down. So the only way for them to remain with volume as they watch the film is to keep their hands and their arms up in a kind of tensive position. And the idea here was to remind people as they watch the 9-minute duration of film that their body exists too. So even they're disembodied because they don't have an avatar, they cannot see themselves, they're still physically connected to what is going on. And if they want, they're able to kind of play around and raise the volume and lower it as they watch it. But the idea was just to kind of remind the viewer, you have a physical body, even if you can't see it, and you have a type of connection to these other physical bodies that you're seeing in this 360-degree world. So a lot of it was really involved in the kind of creating a sense of intimacy with these people. So we had pole dancers, circus performers, musicians, and then also I'll speak about in a few seconds, a pregnant friend of mine also participated, because I wanted to get at people that are going through their daily lives, but often with this real physical intensity to what they do, and particularly working with the sound score and the sound that we recorded to remind people the intensity of this physical labor. So a lot of use of breath within the film, a lot of just getting the kind of noises that come. So when you see people performing or going about their daily lives, you often miss that intensity, and the sound was kind of to bring that back again. What became quite complex in the making of it was just the amount of engaging with the technology, the problem solving to make it work. So, you know, my pro-editor, who was incredible, had to work with masking and reinserting in scenes where we had, for example, the handstand performer having 5 different performances in the 360-degree space and inserting them all together so it seemed somewhat seamless. So there was a lot of that technological digging around. Also, when we then dropped the VR film into Unity and the 360-degree video, finding that something so simple as matching the audio levels with the hand controllers, actually when dealing with the spatial configurations of the audio, suddenly became really complex. So there's this kind of intensity to working through these technological challenges. But what was important for me throughout was always bringing it back to the connection with intimacy, to how the viewer will ultimately be in the space. So in some ways, this resonates with what the presentation we saw earlier on minimum mass by Raki Said and Aotearoa. And I was very lucky and privileged that Raki Said also helped me out in this project, because we had that same shared interest in thinking how these different technologies could go beyond just doing something different technologically in space, doing something that maybe people hadn't seen before, but really work through how they can create a different type of intimate connection. So as I said, I was able to feature my friend Tahia within the VR film, and she was quite heavily pregnant at the same time. But actually, I was also as pregnant as her. We had our babies 6 weeks apart. So I was as pregnant as her when we were shooting this. So again, it helped me to think through what are some of the intimate connections with our body, but also thinking through how we can get very absorbed in those quite cold technological problems, but trying to bring them back towards what some of our lived experiences. And I'm quite interested in trying to work through this space in this era, because I go to a lot of events like this where I'm very grateful to be invited, but kind of like tonight, I think I'm the second of 20 or so speakers and the second to be female, unless I'm accidentally misgendering somebody. So I'm quite interested to see how women and gender diverse people find ways to operate in this space where we're often up against traditions of quite cool technology and the way it might be associated with a kind of non-feminine sense of embodiment. So it's thinking how to bring that back into the space and thinking what are the creative possibilities to work through that lived experience, but also to work through it closely with advancing and pushing the boundaries of the technology. So it was a challenging project to work upon. And there's, as I'm sure everyone finds their projects, there's aspects where I still think, oh, if we could have gone one step further with certain things, we could have reached even more into what this intimate connection is with virtual reality technology. But it definitely felt like a first step in terms of bringing together live action and some basic interactive components to think about how we might perceive and feel ourselves within these optical illusions in ways that just aren't available in other media. So hopefully, as my work progresses in the future, I'll have other opportunities to work through this kind of connection between the physical, the technology, the intimacy, and just really pushing those boundaries of the optical illusion. So that's me. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Miriam, for this perspective and linking it at the same time back to the body. We are very much looking forward to see this work as well. The next project is Haptic Hongi. Tanya Remana is a multimedia artist working together with Miriam Gunn. Equally a video multimedia artist, but also very well connected to the Empathic Computing Lab, where she has developed this project in a collaborative form. So Haptic Hongi, up to you guys. Tanya?
I think Mari is in the room.
Mari? Tanya is also in the room. Mari, there you are. You need to unmute and then you will appear.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everybody. Kia ora koutou. So I'm Mari Gunn, and I'm here speaking because I'm a co-creator and a designer. And as Uwe mentioned, I'm working with computer scientists from the Empathic Computing Lab and also Suchit, who's from another lab in the Auckland Bioengineering Institute, and Tanya Remana, who's a performer, and Wendy Lawn, who is a digital artist who lives in the UK. So my background is as a cinematographer, and as a camera person, working more recently in the documentary field, my whole intention really is to create a link between the viewer and what's seen on screen. So that kind of visceral connection is what I'm always trying to achieve. So when I started my PhD at Elam, really that was what I was testing, and going into using VR and AR and stereoscopic projection, hopefully, just to push the boundaries and experiment. I really enjoyed hearing what you had to say, Miriam. I really can relate to that because the space is one where kind of older women's stories, I suppose, I'm enjoying kind of inserting that into this university space and also this research and experimental space. So my first experiments in VR were teleporting viewers into the homes of our local people. I live in New Lynn, that's become famous recently for the terrible events of only a week and a bit ago. And my PhD really is to do with overcoming what I'm calling intercultural discomfort. I can't really call it racism because I'm playing, and so how can I be so effective as to try to grapple with something so long-standing and so deep? But I'm giving it a whack really to bring up this conversation. In Newland, where I live, over 50% of the people who live in this area were born outside of New Zealand. And I have long-standing connections with Māori, so I tend to do nothing in this field without Māori. And I'm lucky to be working with Tanya. So that's kind of the background a little bit. So I was working in VR and then was lucky to have Mark Billinghurst as my co-supervisor. And so then I started to experiment with augmented reality when I understood that I could bring people to the table instead of relocating viewers to other tables elsewhere. So really, augmented reality is a whole new thing. I certainly couldn't do it on my own. It's quite inaccessible. I need big PCs, a whole variety of headsets, and a whole number of very talented computer scientists. So it's a sort of a cumbersome field in many ways, in a good way though, because we're exercising our intercultural collaboration as we do our work together. Now, I know that there's a video to be screened in a second. I'm not sure if there's anything else I need to say before we look at the video. And I don't want to make excuses for the work, but it has been heartbreaking for the second year in a row to be so ready to exhibit and excited, looking forward to engaging with the public. And then suddenly we captured Tanya on Monday night, and then Tuesday night we were all running to pack up the lab and to scurry back to our homes. So at least we had the data to work with. And then we were challenged by working in different houses and also different time zones. And for me, I'm kind of people say I work with technology, but actually I work with people. So I'm this sort of people management person who is having to ask people to pull out stops. Nobody's being paid, and it's a lot to ask of people to be working late into the night and whatnot. So, and I know you guys have all been in a very similar position. So yes, thank you from the bottom of my heart, and let's have a look at the video. Hi, I'm Mairi Gunn, designer and co-creator of Haptic Hongi. It's part of a suite of extended reality experiences designed to bring people from different cultures together around a dining table where they might begin to practice social connection and collective endeavour. Through my great good fortune to be able to work alongside computer scientists, I discovered that augmented reality could beam people into the table. That's when Jane Rooker came into the picture. We made first contact, take two. When I realised that what we were doing was generating a first contact experiment, it made me think about colonisation and what a mess it's left behind.
I'd expect everyone to understand that every living being is connected and interconnected to humanity.
Jane got very, very busy with her own pressing engagements. We started working with Tanya Remana.
Tēnā koe. Kia ora. Ko Tanya ahau. This has been an exciting journey for me, working alongside Mairi Gunn and Pashan and Wendy around the table, and with the University of Auckland and with the exhibition based in Wellington, unfortunately not happening. Mauri ora to you all. It was fantastic. I enjoyed myself. Kia ora.
This next piece was made by Prashan Shashikumar from the lab. He uses footage taken from our various iterations.
In 2019, we started working on capturing conversations as volumetric data. We started with a cluster of 8 Intel D415 cameras. This was demonstrated at the SIGGRAPH Asia conference. In 2020, we experimented with a few augmented reality headsets and started using Microsoft Kinect for capturing volumetric data. For 2021, we have moved on to HoloLens 2 and incorporated haptics into the experience. We would like to thank Ars Electronica for giving us the opportunity to showcase our research.
Such also from the Bioengineering Institute, and he built the actuator. The actuator gives the feeling of pressure associated with beautiful hongi. We met Wendy Lawn, a creative technologist, through the Empathic Computing Lab intern program.
Are you lost?
And is a brilliant AR/VR artist. Wendy used a photo of Tanya and took her into Character Creator 3 to make virtual Tanya. There were a few passes over the model, some compromises made based on the assets available. The animation part was done using iClone 7. A few test animations were exported for Unity, and we built that.
Kia ora. Hi. Are you lost?
One example is the wave animation. The final animation will be put together with HoloLens volumetric video footage. And that's what you'll see. So thanks everybody from the New Zealand Ars Electronica team, and thanks Ars Electronica Lens. What a fabulous opportunity.
It's nice to see Charles enjoying it. Brilliant. Yeah, so the next steps really for us are to keep working really to finesse what we're doing, and the next not next iteration, because it's a whole different approach, is to repurpose a flight simulator, which is a 180 cylinder, and projecting a stereoscopic interview with my mentor from Omanaya up in the Hokianga, talking about how ritual supports social engagement. So yeah, we hope that we get out of here soon and can do some real work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mari and Tanya. Thank you for sharing your work, but also putting it in the context of the production surrounding that we are facing here currently. But there will be a time, I know, we are going to come together and we will be testing these experiments live and have a good drink afterwards. So yeah, thank you very much. We've got two presentations left, two projects left, which I will speak to. And this is the second to last is Ultrasonic Whisper. Ultrasonic Whisper is a research project driven by the DIV lab at Shanghai Tech University, which we collaborated with, but there were a number of other labs from Shanghai Tech involved, like Mars Lab and Case Lab, driven with this by Professor Hua Yang from the DIV lab, Hongshen Gao and Xiqiang Huang. And from the ArcSec lab side, Yinan Liu was mainly leading the project. Now, we are interested in localized data and augmentation in storytelling of in real world situations. With most of our work, we're quite often focusing on visuals in space, making stories visually something that we can see in space, and it's also usually connected to sound. Now, Ultrasonic Whisper is a pure sound installation, and what we're using is an ultrasound, our ultrasound loudspeakers, and they're quite fascinating. Ultrasound loudspeakers differ from normal speakers as they just send a beam, a direct beam of sound, just like a laser. And the fascinating thing is that if you're standing 1 meter away from this beam, you don't hear anything anymore. So with this, and another interesting aspect is that the sound appears like only an arm length away. It's actually very scary. So this installation tests a magical garden that is overlaid in the courtyard of Shanghai Tech University, and we're using an ultrasonic loudspeaker attached to a robotic arm that is targeting individual persons, and only this person is able to hear the story. The sounds are place bound, so it guides you. You are walking through an invisible garden, through different sections of these gardens, while you're the only one hearing the noises of this surrounding. It's quite a magical experience. The Shanghai team has prepared a video for this. Professor Hua Yang from the DIV lab and her team at Shanghai Tech University. Really can't wait also to visit Shanghai again and to come together with you guys. And equally, of course, being able to invite you over to present the project here in New Zealand. So thank you very much. And the last project that brings our session to an end is actually a student project, an undergraduate student project, exemplary 5 students, Ibtial Al-Hinan, Kenny Chow, Betty Han, Erica He, and Eric Lee, have been part of a studio that I was running with support of Yan Li and Jackie Cheng, to run a studio where we had 10 of our students on site at the University of Auckland, and 10 of our international students which could not return, and they were scattered around the world, in China, in the US, and in South America as well. And the concept here was how, or the exploration here was, how can we work as architects, as in a design studio together, and still have material and tactile experiences of what we are doing. So what we did was using the Mozilla Hub as an exchange and as a presentation platform. So that was next to Zoom, a platform where we met inside of the design the students made. And also here we were able to download the different designs and print them in different locations. And the task was to develop an object which was handheld at about this size, which could be easily printed and assembled at any location in the world. So the information of this was coming from our discussion platform, the Mozilla Hubs, and then extracted to be printed either in China or in Chile or at the University of Auckland. Additionally, the digital information coming from this cloud was superimposed on the objects themselves. So using handheld devices and AR technology, simple handheld smartphones or tablets, these objects were not just physical objects, but they reconnected to the digital world. So they were truly hybrid type of products, which were blurring the boundary in between being something physical and digital. And the students have prepared a very short video clip showing the context, and then on the left-hand side, the physical object filmed through the phone, and on the right-hand side, the Mozilla Hub. And here also, you're very welcome to visit this Mozilla Hub. Access is possible through our webpage, ars.nz. You want to play the video? Vuforia object and model recognition, and the program could just understand what type of model it was and connect this directly from any direction with the overlaid dynamic digital information. Okay, this was the last presentation. And before I hand over to maybe Mark Aurel, I just want to say thank you from my side. It's 10:10 in the evening, at night here in New Zealand. So we had over 3 hours of exciting presentations. And we mentioned it over and over again. We are really looking forward to meet in person again, to see these projects, live. But I want to say really a special thank you to all the presenters that with this relatively short notice, the lockdown really surprised us here in New Zealand. That everyone was straight away willing to put in even more extra work to produce for this type of presentation modus in form of the artist talk. So thank you very much for all of your work. It was super interesting. Also thank you to the Auckland team who has been preparing and cutting and formatting the videos that were handed in. That was Nicholas Roseby, Celine Chiang, and Bennett Atkins. And of course, thank you very much to my colleagues and co-organizers, Marco Waldschnabel, Tane Moleta, and especially Yinan Liu, who has been operating there totally in the background and mixing the different presentation formats and different presentation objects together. Of course, thank you also to the University of Auckland and the different labs involved there, especially the Faculty of Creative Arts and Industry and my School of Architecture and Planning. Thanks, Mark Aurel.
Yes, wonderful. Obviously, the first big thanks goes to Yin Yan. She just really did an amazing job and probably hasn't slept and eaten for a week or so. Can't wait until everything is over to come back to normal life. No, but it was tonight was really a pleasure to be a part of the whole round. It's amazing. A firework would be the wrong term because it was just a never-ending pleasure. It's like the pleasure dome of engagement. So I really appreciate everybody's hard work. We see really only the tip of the iceberg of our work, which is behind that. I appreciate especially the work, how it had a very deep cultural connection and a social connection, and the focus around the human senses and how we interact with technology and the other around technology with us. I see also that we are not driven by the technology, but we're driven by the human experience. And that came across for me very clearly through all the projects. We had a lot of sound artists and artwork, which was really interesting to see the different takes of it. We had the VR and the immersive and augmented experiences, and this is for me really an interesting part in how we now communicate in different channels and overlay and enrich our own experiences and see of how we can have it from a human lens versus from a more pure virtual lens and how that interacts with each other. So thanks everybody. Thanks for the audience to stay around. I said we are now planning to have we'll have the physical exhibition later in the year or the beginning of next year. We have to see of how COVID plays with that, how we get the spaces and everything arranged so that we can have that engagement all together. But it's great to be part of Ars Electronica. I thank the Faculty of Architecture and Design Innovation at the Victoria University of Wellington for their support. Equally, also the partner in Auckland and each of you, of the artists and their support, their whānau and the wider social backup. Thanks for Uwe hosting, co-hosting, and Tane. I pass on now to you for closing the evening.
Kia ora katoa, katoa, katoa. Ngā mihi nui, te ora mai. Thank you everybody for your work. It's been a really stimulating evening, and I wasn't really told that I was going to be doing this, but thank you so much, Mark, for handing on the baton. Thank you to all of our participants who have come in from as far as the US, as close as next door. Thank you for everybody around. Moana Aotearoa, we've come across waters and lands and all sorts of things, but mostly Oricon internet cables, mostly. Most of you we've only met virtually, so one day we look forward to dropping the Zoomies and having a few more of the one-on-one conversations. We welcome you all to Wellington, which has more microbreweries per capita than anywhere else in the world, apparently. So let's welcome the world and our participants and colleagues back to Wellington. So thank you all very much. I hope you've enjoyed the evening. Ka kite.